Welcome back to Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn. It's time for the finale of Part 2. Yeah, that was pretty short, but this is going to end with a bang. This is one of my absolute favourite chapters in the entire series, if not my actual favourite chapter. I've been looking so forward to showing this.
Having anticipated Queen Elincia's attack, the majority of Duke Ludwig's forces left Felleray. The troops stationed at Castle Felleray were merely the bait with which to lure Joffrey and his troops away from Meteor. In Joffrey's absence, Ludwig's objective is nothing less than to take the royal palace, and Queen Elincia with it. Lucia, foreseeing a possible attack on the capital, arranged for Queen Elincia and Princess Leanne to be secretly moved to Fort Alpia. Yet Lucia herself is unable to evade Duke Ludwig's agents. She is captured in the dead of night while attempting to contact an informant. Queen Elincia receives the sad news the next morning.
It's time for Elincia's Gambit. So we won't actually be fighting in Crimea Castle, we'll be fighting in Fort Alpia. And one thing that I want to mention before we start this is the first chapter in this game to have its extended script fully documented on Serenade's Forest, so very often throughout dialogue scenes I will be interjecting, talking about how things were in the extended script, because there are quite a few changes in this one. Overall, the general gist of the dialogue before the base is the same. It's just spaced out a little bit more in the extended script, and there are a few more characters talking sometimes. Well, it's good that Ha's actually bothering to help this time. It's funny, like, I know that the concept of, I've said this many times, of alignment is pretty much stupid to talk about outside of D&D, but I personally consider Ha to be a chaotic neutral character, but not in the usual sense of chaotic neutral being selfish blood knights. I'll explain more about why I consider him this later. And here's that sad news that Elincia's about to hear. Well, message is definitely dead. In the extended script, Ha specifically mentions that the reason they know she's still alive is because they didn't find a body. Oh yeah, Elincia's gonna be taken to the field personally this time. And she's finally gonna show her true power. Well, I mean, we don't really have many subordinates left. Lucia's captured and Joffrey's, away at the moment. And also, this is great development for Elincia right here. She still says this line in the extended script, it just takes a little while longer for her to get to it. And once more, we have some pretty nice art here. There's a bit more lead up to this scene in the extended script. By the way, I will be linking the extended script in the description if you want to see it. I'd recommend that you read it, especially for this chapter, because it's very interesting. I'm glad to have Leanne here. You can always use herons. Oh, I love this line. That's very, very true, as we saw back in Path of Radiance at a few points. Leanne is a lot more strong-willed than she seems. I wouldn't mind that. Neolucci's pretty strong at this point. And his ability to both Canto and Shove is actually going to be vital in one of my strategies in this chapter. So this line is interesting. In the extended script, Elincia actually asked one of her knights to get Amity for her. In the shortened down version, she takes Amity herself. But now that we have Amity, thankfully we're at the base so I can show its stats right now. 15 might, 90 hits, not weighing her down. It's an infinite use brave weapon. Obviously gonna go ahead and equip that over the slim sword. In fact, I don't think there's much reason to even have that slim sword on her in the first place, but I may as well keep it just in case I need to use a weak attack or something. It can be useful if you want to stun an enemy rather than kill them. So, yeah, with Amity, Elincia is insanely powerful. Also note that because it's locked, I believe, in fact I'm pretty sure, this is the first locked weapon that we've got. This means that it cannot be traded to anyone, as you can see there. This means that if Elincia uses a staff to heal, you can't actually use the trade trick to re-equip Amity. Just bear that in mind. Also, now that we're on the inventory screen, we can see who we have for this chapter, at least to start with. We have access to all of Lucia's Azure army, with the exception of Lucia herself, and also Har. And Elincia, obviously. So, I'm going to do a little bit of inventory here. I want to convoy that coin. And Nephany really needs new weapons. I think we have, yes, we have an extra javelin here. Might as well take an extra steel lance on Nephany too. I think she's going to have to fight quite a bit in this chapter. Brom... You know what? Brom is going to keep that coin. In fact, Brom's going to go ahead and take another coin. Because they'll be better served on him than sitting around in Team Elincia's convoy. Speaking of which... in fact, I might actually mention this a bit later. Also, Heather's got a ton of items here. I think she'll keep the Spectre card for now, but... And in fact, I think I'm going to go ahead and trade the Asherah icon to Brom, because there's a reason why I'm filling up Brom's inventory with stuff. Sadly, I'm not going to be using him very much in this chapter, so I don't really need much space for weapons. He's going to fulfill a similar role to Ileana in Part 1, let's just say, but I'll go into that in more detail later. As for this secret book, this is going to seem kind of weird since Nephany already has a good amount of skill, but I'm going to go ahead and use the secret book on her because that will cap her skill, and that'll give her higher chances of gaining strength and defense with bonus experience. I'll probably go into bonus experience next, but I'm going to go ahead and use this because, like I said earlier, I like to use stat boosters as soon as possible in Radiant Dawn. There's no real point in keeping them. And as for Har, do I have anything on the axe? Yeah, might as well take an extra hand axe. And what the heck, an extra steel axe is good too. That should be pretty much fine on weapons for him for now. I like to make sure Har is stocked with lots of ranged weapons in this chapter, because he's going to be holding down one part of this map entirely on his own, and he's going to need a lot of ranged weapons for that. And I think at this point, yeah, Mordecai's going to keep the Olivia Grass. Neolucci only has one Library Stone use left, and Leth doesn't even have any. I think I'm going to keep Leth the way she is for now. Okay, the concoction. I don't think Leanne is going to need that. I'd rather give that to Har, because he's more likely to be taking damage, and he has a ton of HP to make use of that concoction. The game loves giving healing items to characters who don't need them, because Leanne is just... She's never really going to need that concoction, because if she gets hit, she's probably dead anyway, so... I'll just give her the Vulnerary for now. And I think at the moment... Yeah, Elincia with the concoction is fine. Nephany needs another healing item. And Heather thankfully just happened to steal one of them in the last chapter, so Nephany can go ahead and take that. Now I'm going to move on to... In fact, before I do info, I'm going to go to award experience. And I just want to show something. So, I got an enormous amount of bonus experience from the last chapter, thanks to doing the last chapter in a sort of pacifist way. Definitely not completely pacifist. I fully admit that, my attempt at that chapter was pretty clumsy. I could have done it a lot better, but that's all in the past now. So watch this. Yes, in theory, I could 3rd tier Ha right now, and that's exactly what you do in a speedrun. In the Japanese version, this wasn't possible because you couldn't 3rd tier without a certain item, and that's going to come into play a little later in this chapter when I talk about something interesting, but for now, just remember that you couldn't do this with Ha in the Japanese version, but even a level 20 Ha is still ridiculous at this point. So if you 3rd tier Ha now, you can easily beat this chapter in 1 or 2 turns. I might show that as bonus footage in the next part or something, but I'm not going to do that here. What I am going to do, though, is I'm going to go ahead and use a little bit of bonus experience on Nephany. I've got a ton of it, and it won't actually carry over to part 3. If I don't spend this bonus experience now, I'll still get it later, and that's probably the best level up at this point that I can hope for, but I won't have access to this again until part 3, chapter 9, which is quite a long way off. So I'd rather spend a fair amount of it now. And really, it's just Nephany who needs it, because I'm not really planning on using anyone else extensively. Ha, I'd rather... he's going to get a lot of experience during the chapter itself. I could bonus experience Grom up a bit, but I don't really plan on using him, so... This is kind of massive Nephany favoritism, but... Like I said, she's really my best bet here, and these are actually quite good. I'm liking her gaining speed, strength, and defense for these level ups. That's not the best, but oh well. Okay, now that she has capped speed as well, yeah, at this point, extra stats on Nephany is pretty much overkill, but I'm going to go for one more. Just one. Well, strength is good. I was hoping for defense rather than luck there, but that's not bad. I think I'll keep it at that for now. I mean, I could get Nephany a lot higher if I wanted to, but she's going to get a decent workout during this chapter. And Elincia doesn't really need that. She's going to be leveling up quite a bit through staff uses. As for supports, we actually can get some supports here, so I might as well do them, even though Grom and Nephany are going to be spending this chapter on opposite sides of the map, so that support is not going to really affect all that much. So I could send Grom down. You know what, I'll think about it. And, you know what the heck. In fact, these two are going to be spending a lot of time next to each other in this chapter, so that support might actually help me. And now, info conversations. Both of these are very important. I'm going to go for Khalil first. I like the background here. Looks like some kind of war room in this castle. Remember in the last chapter, Khalil didn't join? Well, that's going to change now. Well, I mean, I kind of spoiled what brings her here just then. Lucia had a lot of counter plans going. Good to know that Khalil was working for her this whole time. We'll definitely use the help of an extra mage. One thing I love about Part 2 is all the different gambits that are going on at the same time. Just how Elincia's retainers finally get to show their political savvy. Please don't invite Makalov. Please don't invite Makalov. Okay, so, doesn't seem obvious there. I mean, well, it should be obvious, but we recruited Khalil out of that. While we're on the info conversations, though, I'll just do Ha's one right here. This one obviously requires you to have recruited Ha in 2 Prologue. Oh yeah, that guy who's really awesome. We're hearing his name mentioned a lot, but it's surprising that he hasn't really played a role in this part yet. And yes, we already know that. And Elincia's being self-deprecating again. Hara has some pretty good dialogue here. This is part of why I feel like Hara is kind of a chaotic neutral character. It's not so much that he is chaotic in his own right, it's more that he just doesn't really like taking orders. Shiharam is really the only person he's ever been okay with taking orders from. and he just doesn't really care about authority very much. Yeah, about that, pretty much all of them are jerks. Though this is actually something interesting to know. This might be the reason why you rarely fight Pegasus Knights in Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn, because they report directly to the Apostle, and for the most part, she's on your side all the time. So it makes sense you'd never fight Pegasus Knights that much. Another case of a conversation that mostly exists for story flavor, but they're like, you know what, let's just throw in an item for no reason anyway, because it is funny how they put so many 3-star conversations in this. It's like they thought that players wouldn't even do base conversations if they didn't get something out of it. And that's why I said these 2 base conversations are very important. The first one gets us Khalil, and the second one gets us a physics staff for Elincia. This is great because it means that she can heal everyone on this map from really far away without needing to resort to getting right in the front lines, and it also means that she's far away from enemies when she forcibly equips a staff. But we've recruited Khalil, so it's time to show her bio. A lot of players brush off Khalil because in Part 4, we'll be recruiting another Fire Mage who is forced into endgame. This Fire Mage has a few issues though. So Khalil might actually be stronger than them in the long run. She's also much more likely to get an SS rank in Fire Magic, and given the SS Fire Tome gives +5 speed, it's actually a pretty good weapon to use. Speaking of speed, Khalil's speed cap is decent both in 2nd and 3rd tier, at least by mage standards. So she's one of the more consistently fast magic users in this game, which is a rare trait to have. Her base stats are pretty similar to how they were in Path of Radiance. Solid but not amazing all round, but definitely enough to get her by when she first joins. And her growths are also solid all round. Again, nothing spectacular, but nothing particularly bad either. And this is a very good thing given that most mages in Radiant Dawn have at least one major deficiency among their stats. Khalil's main weakness is availability. She unfortunately is part of the Crimean Royal Knights for Part 2, rather than the Azure Army, so she doesn't join early in Part 3. If she didn't have this issue, I'd probably consider her the best mage in this game. Khalil is also the bearer of one of this game's precious Nile skills. You probably won't end up using it on her later in the game, but you'll definitely want to remember that she has it. It won't be until endgame when I can explain why Nile is so important in this one, but believe me, it is. Overall, Khalil's a pretty decent mage who shouldn't be overlooked just because of potential endgame redundancy. One thing that I need to say about Khalil right here though, this Meteor Tome. It's pretty useful during this chapter, but I'm actually going to trade it away from her immediately and giving it to my delivery guy, Brom. Reason being, this Meteor Tome is going to be extremely vital to me for something that I need to do during Part 3. Khalil will be with the Crimean Royal Knights, i.e. Joffrey's group during Part 3, which means that if Meteor is still on her, by the time I get it in Part 3, it'll be way too late. Brom, however, will be joining up with the Part 3 party very early in that part. Brom, Nephany, Heather, and Har, in fact. So if there's anything that you want to transfer to the Part 3 party, definitely make sure you give it to them. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and take that Discipline Scroll. I might want to take this Steel Blade. Let's just say that there's someone in Part 3 who might make good use of that. And I guess I'll take the Speedwing as well, though someone here could use the Speedwing now, if I really wanted to, but I don't think it's all that necessary at this point. I might save the Speedwing for someone else. So Brom's loaded up. Nephany, I sort of want her to be more carrying weapons, but is there anything here that I want to transfer to the Part 3 party? We won't really need that Steel Knife. Wait a minute, where the heck did I even get that Steel Knife? I completely forgotten. I'm actually going to go ahead and take that on Heather. Because the Bronze Knife, it's not really that vital that I weaken things with Heather. 4 might, but it's still better than a Bronze one. That's good, I think Brom's good. So yeah, the whole Meteor thing, that will all make sense later, don't worry. I'll just say that there is a second playthrough exclusive epilogue scene, and unlocking it is so much easier with this Meteor Tome. And because I want to show this scene, I'm going to be transferring the Meteor Tome to the Part 3 party. And with that... Okay, yeah, obviously I want to check out the shop, almost forgot about that. You can buy some healing staves here. They are selling some decent items from bargains. Recover, I don't think is all that necessary. Elincia heals enough with Mend anyway. We have a couple of elixirs if you really want them. I'm going to go ahead and buy a Killer Lance for Nephany. I like having one of those on. Nope, not for Leanne. That's completely nonsensical. And in terms of other stuff, like I said earlier, we will be getting 10,000 gold when the Crimean Royal Knights return. And I'm going to need 6,000 gold when they do, because there's a very worthwhile bargain. Speaking of worthwhile bargains, this is not a worthwhile bargain. Why would you ever buy this? Slim swords are terrible. But if you want to see the regular armory here, we can still buy wind edges, we can buy javelins, we can buy great lances, more hand axes. I think for the moment we are kind of set on weapons. Let me just check everyone once again. I think Heather's fine. Brom could use an extra hand axe now I think about it. Guess it's not the end of the world if you put 20 coins in the convoy. Actually, now I can show something. Yeah, you can buy things in bulk. What the speedrun does at this point is buy like a whole ton of hand axes and just put them all on har. Anyway, I'll give Brom one of those hand axes, and I think Nephany's fine, we still can't forge, so... Yeah, that's the reason why I'm putting coins on people who are going to Part 3, because coins are completely useless in this part. You know what, while Har has a free spot in his inventory, he might as well take a coin. Although he's probably going to have to put that in the convoy later, because the way I had this chapter set up, Har usually picks up a certain item. Oh, right, and Heather will also need to steal something later in this map. Forgot about that. Let's actually swap out that one coin there. Yeah, the Part 3 party's going to have a lot of coins anyway, so... Yeah, I almost forgot that I need to have Heather steal something in this chapter. And this should be pretty much set, so let's go. There's a really good line coming up here. There's a lot more dialogue there in the extended script. And we cut to the rebels. By 2 days, he means about 8 or 9 turns. I forget exactly, but they don't arrive for quite a while. Of course, everyone has plans and counterplans constantly in place at this point. Yes, we have traitors amongst us. Exactly, we have bigger fish to fry at this point. And this is actually a little interesting. We get a line from every character on your side at this point, who you've recruited and who's still alive. It's almost like final chapter quotes in some other games, and this is the final chapter of Part 2. So it does make sense. And we don't just have our playable characters here, we also have a big ton of NPCs, and they're actually pretty competent, surprisingly. So here we are. Already you can see there's going to be a lot of enemies to fight here, and there's also tons of reinforcements. Although this first line makes it a little hard to take seriously, because now he sounds like Chandler. Could our situation be any better? However, our defenses are pretty good, and this is going to get confusing because the NPCs have this exact same armor as the rebels. This line is actually a little weird because in the extended script, one of Ludwig's soldiers says earlier specifically to capture the queen alive and not to kill her. And apparently this line is still there in the extended script, so that doesn't really make a lot of sense. For reasons you'll soon find out, Ludwig needs Elincia alive. And with that, we go straight to battle preparations. And obviously we have the more dramatic battle preparations theme here. So, I'll see you next time when we begin one of my favorite chapters in the whole series.